Guten Tag. Whoa, my voice crack. Guten Tag and good morning. I'm George McKenna. I'm speaking in different voice today because I want to maybe show I have a different talent for this kind of thing where I can hear the thing in accent and then speak it back to the person like I'm from there too, you know. So this video here I want to make about psychotropic drug. But first I'm going to light this marijuana cigarette. Oh boy, very strong. So part of why people I think sometimes thinks I'm crazy is because I put on different voices sometimes and nobody knows why I'm doing that, or you know, they just know it's not the right voice to match my body or life. So I wanted to make this video about psychotropic drugs, and the impact, what that really feels like when you're on, say, like a heavy dose of risperidone or Zyprexa or olanzapine, which is the trade name for that drug. Weird thing. First thing that's weird about psychotropic drugs is just like pot, they have many different names for the same drug. So, you know, we've got pot, piff, chronic, green, kush, you know, all these different names to describe pot, marijuana that we're smoking, right? Well, it's the same with psychotropic drugs. There's a brand name and then a trade name. So there's Zyprexa, Zydus, olanzapine. It's all the same drug. Risperidone, Risperdal, something else, you know. I'm not a pharmacist, so I don't know all the drugs that they have. But I want to set up an experiment for people to understand what it's like to be on a dose of psychotropic medication. Like if you haven't smoked weed before, then this would be a great experiment for you. I'm obviously joking. This is what's called a fully baked idea. You should never smoke weed. Drugs are bad. Okay. So, a psychotropic drug, when it goes into your body, gives you a type of a high. But it's like you smoke weed and it's like, I feel good. You know, when you have a psychotropic drug, you're like, what's real? Which, you know, the idea that we're giving mind-altering drugs to people that are already having trouble making sense out of the world around them doesn't really make sense, does it? But these drugs, they have horrible side effects. Like, I'm going to show you guys something gross. This is my back. And maybe the scars aren't going to show up as well on the film. Oh yeah, you kind of see them. Yeah, you see my back here? All this shit all over my back. All of that. I've had that for 10 plus years now. And I got that rash when I first got diagnosed as schizophrenic, and they put me on a drug called risperidone. And what I pointed out to my psychiatrist was, yo, doc, I got this crazy rash all over my back. Do you think it has something to do with this risperidone? And the doctor's like, no, it is not. No, it has not one thing to do with risperidone. I go through and I read the book for side effect, and there's no side effect for risperidone of that in your back. And I don't believe him. It's not that I'm racist. That is how the psychiatrist that fucked up my back like that spoke. The other thing that was weird about this guy was like, okay, no, I swear to God. He was very big about his interpretation of God versus my interpretation of God. And obviously they weren't going to jive because I was a queer Mormon. Man, that shrink was... But they're all like that. They're all fucked. All psychiatrists are fucked in the head. Because they're like people that have never really lived life. And all they do is they go, well, your behavior's outside of this very narrow perspective that I view to be normal. So I'm going to give you these drugs to make you fucking retarded until you fit in this box. And these drugs, they all have very painful side effects. Anyways, this the rash, turns out, is a side effect from risperidone. And if you actually... Like if this shrink that I had actually read any of the medical literature on this, he'd know that it was like, it's something that comes up in 1 of 1,000 cases. So, like that's the kind of thing where I get a little bit frustrated because, me with no medical training, I'm able to find the information that this quack should know about these drugs. The other thing is these drugs all have very toxic and harmful side effects and effects, really. I mean, to say side effects is kind of nuts because these are the effects of these drugs. Parkinson's disease, cancers, rare cancers, liver diseases, skin disease. I'll be lucky if I live to 50 because, I've been mental health arrested over 10 times, and I've had these drugs force injected into me every single time. And so that's a real cumulative effect because they really overdo it when they're injecting you. Because when they're injecting you, you're saying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. And they're going, that means you're more sick. And then they inject you with more stuff. And it's really toxic what they're putting in. And it's really, scary to be intelligent enough to know that what these morons are putting into your body is poison and that you don't have the right to say no. Like, that's probably the most terrifying thing about it. And, knowing that it's going to slowly kill you and make your life really difficult when you're older, that's really frustrating. So, when you're in solitary confinement, that's what you think about. You walk around and try and think, all right, how am I going to make the time that I have left with a functional body in my life enjoyable. And so that's what I do. I go and I play my guitar and street perform, and I'll go and tell jokes, and, I'll try and write a book and stuff. And sometimes it's good, and, I'm working on my book. It's not the greatest, but the first couple chapters are decent. I really wish that the mental health system would change, and so I get frustrated when there's this big Bell Let's Talk campaign that's a do-nothing campaign, when there's a real opportunity to get the public interested and informed about these methods of treatment. Because, as they say, if the shoe was on the other foot, which is to say, if you were to be placed in my situation, you would want the system to be different too. You'd want the right to say no to a drug that you didn't want. Imagine that. Imagine you're at a party and somebody just comes up to you and says, hey man, you want some LSD? And you're like, no thanks man, not right now. And he's like, well, here you go. And then you're on LSD. Or, hey man, you want heroin? No, I think I'm cool. well, there you go. You got some now, you know. So that's what it's like to be on psychotropic drugs. If you like these videos or whatever that I make, I talk about more than just mental health. I talk about life and other things. You can subscribe to the channel. I figure maybe more people might subscribe, and I might actually start making like higher quality videos. You know, that could be a thing. Who knows? I might even start filming some of my stand-up sets and posting those, because they're actually getting kind of funny these days. All right. So I hope this was informative. You know, there are a bunch of resources. You know, if you're someone that's affected by mental illness, or you have a friend or family member that's affected by mental illness, and you don't feel like you're really getting the standard of care that your loved one or yourself deserves from the state, there are some books that are worth reading, like The Brain That Changes Itself. Thomas Szasz, S-Z-A-Z, wrote a book called The Myth of Mental Illness. That's very informative. There's a YouTube channel called Psych Truth, which is run by, I believe the doctor is John Breeding. Very, very intelligent man. I mean, he doesn't speak with a lot of charisma, but the information that he presents is incredibly insightful, and I think could only be useful. My last word of advice to the friends and family of the mentally ill, you know, you don't have to call the psycho police on us. You know, you don't have to put your friends and loved ones in psycho jail. You know, like when I'm really up, you know, I just need to talk to the kind of cat that would have done acid in the 60s and still believed in the dream. You know, like sometimes you just need somebody to talk to that sees the world not the exact same way as you do, but at least in the same direction. And that, you know, admittedly, when you're schizophrenic is hard, because you're looking at a lot of things that I think not everyone else is. It's 2016. Let's stop torturing people and calling it healthcare. All right. Have a good day.